Let's look at the clause itself. If you're going to transfer the goods and the works and the services that I'm giving you to a third party, you have to comply with all applicable export controls, and you also have to get my permission. In addition, if you are going to do an indirect export to any destination or person, you are also not to disclose it or to export it, and that this clause is going to survive the contract. We are going to look specifically at the verb transfer, the third party, all applicable laws, the consent aspect of it, the indirect transfer that was mentioned in the clause, and then also the survival clause. Now let's look at the verb transfer. So they need to clarify, what do they mean by a transfer? By the word transfer, do they mean that it's an export? Do they mean that it's a re-export? Do they mean an in-country transfer? What is their definition? And then also, if I move it from my desk to the next desk, that's a transfer too. It becomes very critical to define the word transfer. To the third party, what do they mean by a third party? Are we talking about third parties within my company, third parties outside of the company, third parties here in the United States? Who are these people that they have in mind that they cannot, that export controls will apply if you transfer to these third parties? So define it. Are they restricted parties? Are they prohibited parties? And even within the company itself, you have to think of, okay, to a third party, but then let's define it. Who in the company can receive this item? Who will receive it? And what will they receive that is controlled? Because, for example, especially in multinational corporations, I said my department is me and Susie Q and Susie Joe. Apparently, I'm running out of names. But if Susie Q is a US person, I can transfer the controlled items that we identified to Susie Q. But if Susie Joe is a foreign national, then I cannot transfer to Susie Joe this item. So you need to clarify it for your own sake who can receive these items or not. All applicable export controls laws. There are certain regulations out there, the most common being the EAR, Export Administration Regulation, and also the International Traffic in Arms Regulation. Since we have SANTA here, chances are that all these goods and services and works that SANTA is bringing are subject to the Export Administration Regulation. The export controls laws that you run into, especially that are mostly used for in commerce, are the ITAR and the EAR. The other aspect of it that you saw on the clause is the indirect transfer. Going back to this word transfer, because it's always there, the indirect transfer is, okay, under what circumstances? If I am the buyer or the receiver of Santa's goods, then if I am going to send some of these goods, and then the person that receives this, for example, will also send it or sell it somewhere else, then where does my responsibility end? It is advisable that when you have an indirect transfer, in other words, you will sell this item, but especially when you will sell this item to a third party, then third party is going to transfer it somewhere else, then it is incumbent upon you to put on the contract that you will have with that party that this item is controlled and that they need to ask your permission before they can send it. And then they need to ask the US government's permission depending on where they're sending it for a license. So in other words, you know where that item is going to go. That's from a practical perspective, from a contractual perspective. But from this end, where you are receiving Santa's goods, then you need to clarify it with Santa, indirectly transferred to where. What are the destinations of concern for Santa that this item should not go? As to the survival clause is not going to help you. If you are receiving export control items, by golly, you have to comply with the export control laws and regulations, and therefore no contract will get you out of it.